Hello and welcome to this edition of You Can Get There From Here. I'm Dr. Joel Moore, Chair of the Department of Communication and Digital Media Production at the University of Central Missouri, and it is my pleasure every week to get to visit with some of our alumni. I talk to some who graduated in digital media production, others who got their degrees in communication studies, and still others who got their master's degree. I'm going to do that all over again. All right, try it again. Hello. Welcome to this edition of You Can Get There From Here. I'm Dr. Joel Moore, Chair of the Department of Communication and Digital Media Production at the University of Central Missouri, and it is my pleasure every week to get to visit with some of our alumni. I get to visit with some who graduated in digital media production, others who got their degree in communication studies, and even some who got their master's degree. Today, we're talking to one of those digital media production graduates, Maddy Harrison. Maddy, how are you doing?
I'm doing swell, Joe. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. So, Maddy is one of those students we talk about all the time when we say, if you come to UCM, you can get started right away from day one. I don't know if it was day one that Maddy got started, but it was certainly within the first week or two. So, Maddy, why don't you talk about your journey and what got you to UCM and what you did while you were here?
Well, I ended up at UCM kind of by accident. I was originally planning to be an engineer when I was in high school. And then I did one open house at Summit Tech, walked into their studio, and everything changed for me. I ended up falling in love with video editing, and decided that, sorry, and decided that that was just going to be my whole thing moving forward. So I started looking at schools, and UCM immediately stood out. And as soon as I toured, it was the only school I ever toured. And as soon as I met people in the comms department, I knew that was where I was going to be. So I just, only school I applied for, it was basically like no plan B. This was it for me. Um, so then when I got to UCM, very quickly knew that I was going to be digital cinema. Um, I came in with a lot of dual credits, so I was able to start my major credits right away, which was awesome. And then from there, honestly, college was such a blur. It happened so fast. Honestly, I'm so sad about it because I look back at college so fondly. It was so much fun. I did honestly a ton with digital media. I was part of the Mule Skinner for a long time. I did Media Creators Association for a while, and then I was a part of the social media team. Actually, kind of like to start my off, I was social media, and then to end off my UCM career, I was social media. So it was, like I said, a blur.
Well, I'm sure it was, given everything that you did and everything you got involved in. I'm so glad that you decided not to go that engineering route and decided to be one of ours. So remind me to thank Summit Tech.
Yeah, right.
You were with Sean Harrell up there, is that right?
Yeah,
One of
yeah,
our
he was
dual
awesome.
Yeah, one of our dual credit instructors. I love going up there and visiting with him. So that's your journey from high school coming to UCM and getting involved. Now take us from graduation to what you're doing today.
So I did not get a job straight out of college, and it was really hard for me because I stayed at my college job for a while. It was only a couple months, but in that time, everybody that I graduated with had moved forward into media careers, and I was felt like kind of low man on the totem pole. But then a couple months after graduation, I started at a construction company doing hardware ads, which was not exactly what I wanted to do, but it was a good step in the door. Then of May of 2023, I started at ARG Marketing as a videographer, as their sole videographer, and actually just left that position about 2, 3 weeks ago, and was amazing. Was such a fun kind of year and a half for me. I learned so much about my skills, about the industry, about marketing. I mean, God, the things I know about paid media now. But now, currently, I am just brand new at Burns and McDonnell as an assistant videographer, and that has been a crazy few weeks.
Yeah, you were saying when you came on that it's been nuts. You've been so busy. So that's one of those
Yeah,
things that you're used to being busy though, right?
I love being busy. Honestly, I hate twiddling my thumbs and waiting for something to do. So, having this huge learning curve is a great challenge for me. The hardest part of this job is learning to speak their language because I was doing independent grocery advertising before I came to Burns, and now it's ironically engineering. So it's like speaking a whole different language with these people. I don't know what they're talking about half the
But
time.
but that's one of the things that we stress, isn't it? Is that, you develop the skills, they'll teach you their language. They'll teach you what it is
Mhm.
they want you doing, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, and everyone there is so great. The work is so much fun already. I've been able to dabble in animation already with them, and that's been super fun. I've already been on several shoots, and actually, I've had several people come up to me and ask me about UCM because they're also alumni. And my
Nice.
first day, there's a giant mule on my desk that says like happy first day of work with a hardworking mule on our team. There's nothing we can't do. I felt like that's
Excellent.
such a good sign.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said that you were digital cinema because I could not remember if you were digital cinema or journalism. You really did everything but sports. How how has all of that played into your career and not just where you are now, but your progression as you've gone from job to job?
It's it's made me more rounded as an employee. It's given me a lot of different perspectives, especially because with the Mule Skinner, I was not only a media editor, but I also did copywriting during quarantine when we couldn't be on campus and doing anything. I wrote blogs, and that gave me the push to do a lot of the creative writing I did in my last role. I did a lot of copy for our web clients. And so having that writing and that literature background helped me, how do I want to say this? It helped me write more concisely and more eloquently when working for my clients. And then on the media side, on the film side, it gave me a bit of an edge against some of my employees at my last job because a lot of them had come purely from a marketing standpoint. And so they were thinking about how do we create this video to push business and drive consumers in. Whereas I was thinking about it from the angle of how do we engage people? How do we draw them in with the work that we're doing? How do we make trash bags look fun? Like
Yeah.
those were the questions that we had to ask ourselves at our job. How do you make this martini look so divine that someone wants to go to a store and pick it up? And so they kept thinking of it from a sales perspective, whereas I wanted to think about it as a beautiful, like, how do we bring this product to life? And
You're a storyteller. You wanted to tell the story of the product.
yes, and actually that really came in my favor. One day we had a kind of just like throwaway conversation with Clorox about this trash idea that he had, and he wants to make trash exciting. You know, these products are people buy them all the time. You don't ever think to really market them. So I came up with this story of like, oh, you make the grocery list, you go to the store, you get all of these ingredients, and then you've got to get the plastic wrap and the aluminum foil and the trash bags and the Clorox wipes. And so I took the time to write out this storyboard, write out this shot list, and then take him through the story of it. And he loved it. I mean, his reaction was instant, just like big smiles. This is what we came here for. So,
So that storyboarding that we teach, that comes in handy, right?
yes, actually, they are really particular about it at Burns and Mac, is what I'm learning. They love their shot lists, they love their storyboards, and pre-production was something I actually brought to my old job because for the most part, my predecessors just kind of did it in the moment. But with these bigger vendor shoots, when they're paying the money to have this professional production done, come prepared because then you're going to save time, you're going to save product. Like editing is going to be so much easier. I can't stress enough how important those pre-production documents are, and you don't understand it in college. It's such a
That's
waste of time in college.
That's why I brought that up, is because I remember so many students, especially like in our media aesthetics class, when we're teaching about photography and we do the one assignment on storyboarding, everybody's like, "Oh, are we ever really going to have to do this?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you do. And it's harder than you think to come up with those shots, like to visualize them in your head beforehand. It's hard, but then once you do it, it makes that shooting process just 1,000 times easier.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So, as you reflect on your time at UCM and all the activities that you're involved in, you mentioned the Mule Skinner, you mentioned the media creators. Is there anything you wish you had done that you didn't do?
I think
Any activity you wish you'd been a part of?
Honestly, I wish I would have taken more multicam classes. I think that would have been my one thing that if I could go back and do it again, my one multicam class I took, I did not take it willingly. I will admit that.
Ouch. I was the professor.
It was because most people said that it was really like that was the sports track. If you wanted to do sports, that's the way you went. And I had no desire to do sports broadcasting. So I was like, why would I do it? I don't want to do this class. And I think it was Price that told me, you're going to take the class. I was like, okay, fine. And I did it. And it was such a cool experience. I don't know if you remember what my class did, but we
Mhm.
did the Christmas cookie challenge. And it was so much fun. I had such an amazing experience with my peers on that I wish I had made time in my schedule to take more of those classes, but I just never thought to do it. I had other things I wanted to pursue at the time.
Do you know
But
we just took that set apart 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
uh, it hurt my heart.
That set was up for a long time.
Blood, sweat, and tears went into making those sets.
That was a lot of fun. That the multicam class, yeah, it's not for the sports track. I mean, it's in the sports
Yeah.
concentration, but it's intended for anybody who wants to work in television, anybody who wants to be on that production side. So, yeah, that's why we always try with that one. You guys get to create whatever show you want to do.
Yeah. And I don't really even remember who came up with that idea, but as soon as it was said, everyone just latched onto it and then there was no going back.
Well, weren't you and Caroline Smith and was it Abby Daniel?
Yeah, yeah.
That were
We
that were the
left
spearheads.
it.
You led the trick. So
Well, I mean, it was right before Christmas break, so how could we not do a Christmas production?
I mean, right? Yeah, it had to
Right.
be done. So
Yeah.
so I've started asking all of our alumni this question as I've done more of these interviews and I've talked to more people. I've it's kind of brought something up for me. What motivates you? What drives you?
Learning, I think, is probably the biggest thing is I hate feeling stagnant and that I'm not doing anything to push myself to be more knowledgeable, be more creative. And that's always been my biggest push. I was an overachiever in school. Just, I mean, the whole time. I always wanted to be the best. I wanted to have the best grades. I wanted to push myself to be the most successful version of myself. And I've realized kind of in my career that I've learned everything I needed to make it by and do a good enough job to get my paycheck and go home. But that's not why I was there. I was there to learn new skills and take on new challenges and, like I said, be the most successful version I can be. And so that's what took me to animation, was because it was this new challenge. It was so foreign to me. I had, one class with Newsome in college where he gave us kind of a down and dirty basic approach of this is how you can do, the fundamentals. But from there it was, well, how do I get into 3D? How do I do, a pre-composition with 18 things layered down into it, and learning those skills, learning, trim paths and all of these different like expressions and After Effects that you can do. It's been so cool to be able to put those things in my arsenal and now go to a high level corporate company like Burns and Mac and say, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about right now, and I can do that. So learning has always been the biggest push for me.
That's really cool. So as you're learning, as you're growing, as you're gaining these new skills, what are your long-term goals?
I want to have my own freelance company when I eventually get myself settled enough to build my arsenal of cameras, which is going to take many years because those things are way too expensive. That is the goal, as I want to have my own studio. I want to do my own marketing and pick my own clients. I've kind of been able to bleed into that right now while I'm doing work with Burns and Mac. My old boss and I are on such good terms that she has actually reached out to me and she's like, "Hey, some of our clients want you, not your old company. They want you to
Nice.
continue doing freelance work for them." So that was a huge compliment, and I think it's really helping me get my feet wet with someone I'm comfortable with to kind of test these waters of freelance. And then once I get my feet under me, then I feel like it's just like sky's the limit, how far you
That's
want to go.
that's outstanding. Well, when you get to be freelance and you have your own business, Remember, we have some budding young Maddie Harrisons here still at the university. They'd be happy to work with you.
Oh
Speaking of
yeah.
those budding young students, what advice would you have for a current UCM student? And what would you tell somebody thinking about coming to UCM to study digital media?
The first thing I would tell a current UCM student is you've got it pretty good. Like talking to other people who went to different schools, didn't really realize how lucky I am to have gone to UCM until after the fact. Because when you're in the grid of it, all you see is the work you have to do and the homework assignment that's due by 11:59 on Blackboard. But now looking back, I'm so grateful for the experiences I had. So take it slow, appreciate the assignments for what they are, even if you don't enjoy them all the time. They are 100% worth it. And you're going to want to look back on those someday and say, man, I would wish I would have kept those project files so I could have gone back and looked at that project again. Enjoy it because it's worth it. But I would say my biggest advice to a UCM student is take that one class that you think you're just going to hate. Like it's going to be hard and it's going to suck. But like media law changed my world. I actually walked away from that class with some of the best knowledge about my career and legally where I stand as a creative. Everyone told me like the best you're going to get in my class is a C. They're like, accept it. It's the hardest class you're going to take. I loved that class. It was amazing. But I dreaded it leading up to it because I was like, this is so hard. It's all essays and legal jargon and blah, blah, blah. I adored it. And the same thing with kind of multimedia, advanced multimedia. I was really anxious to take that class because I just did not think I was going to be able to do the work. And several assignments, I sat there just sighing and so frustrated because I couldn't get it to work. And now I would not be able to do the work that I do without those classes. So I would say take the class out of your comfort zone. It's worth it. It really is. Unless it's audio and acoustics, don't take that class ever.
We don't require that one anymore.
I know it's horrible. It's the worst class.
So, what about a student who's thinking about coming to UCM, who's trying to decide between a couple of universities, why UCM?
Well, like I said, UCM really stands out from the rest, not only from an educational standpoint, but from a community standpoint. The education is top tier. Like you get such a well-rounded, well-balanced curriculum where you're going to touch every part of that creative process, even when it's like to be in front of the camera. And that those classes are so important because how are you ever going to direct talent if you don't know what their perspective is like?
Yeah, you
But
didn't want to do that, did you?
I didn't want to do that. And
You're
any
a
career
natural
tell
for
you,
it, but you didn't want to do it. So.
well, I don't know if I'm natural, but those classes are hard. They really challenge you and they force you to think out of your perspective. But then once you're in the field trying to tell your subject who you're trying to photograph how you want her to stand, they come in handy. It's
Yeah.
it's really useful to have. So that education piece of it was, I mean, amazing. And like I said, I've talked to people from other schools. I've listened to the work that they've done. I watched a kid not know how to under wrap a cable, and it was so painful to watch. I'm like, you're a senior. How do you not know this? And it's just basic skills like that that you don't realize you're lucky to know until you've got it. But then on the community side, there is a special place in my heart for the communications department and the media labs in the basement of Martin. Because I spent so many days down there, literally just like chatting about everything and nothing with people down there. People I didn't even know. Like just anybody who's down there, you just find this community of people that there's a competitiveness to it a little bit, but not in the way that you want to beat each other, but in the way that's like, well, I want to know what she knows. How did she do that? Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Caroline Smith and I talk all the time about how like we're competing with each other, but not in a negative way. And
Hmm.
just the way that like I want to be as good as her. I
I
want to be able
remember.
to do what she does. And it's such a cool experience to be a part of that community because then at my first job, I was in such a different environment and it made me realize how important it was to be surrounded by people that pushed me to be the better side of
Hmm.
myself rather than, oh yeah, this is a 9 to 5, just do your work, go home. That's not what this job is about. That's not what people in this community should be like. And so
Yeah.
having that experience at UCM showed me that like Oh gosh, I could get so sappy about it if I wanted to. But just that being surrounded by these people, gosh, it's so memorable. And it's like it really does, I feel like, change you a little bit as a person because you meet such amazing creative people and then you learn from them and then you get to spread all everything that you've learned to everybody else. And I just don't feel like you get that experience anywhere else.
Yeah, finding your people is so important. Well, Maddie, we're so glad you found us. We're so glad that we got to be a part of your journey. I'm so proud of you and the things that you've accomplished. And I look forward to the day that I get that call saying, "Hey, Joe, I've started Maddie Harrison Productions. Would you like to come out and see what we're doing?" I will be there in a heartbeat. So great job, kiddo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you, Sam, more than you understand.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Thank you all for tuning in today to listen to Maddie Harrison on this episode of You Can Get There From Here. I'm Dr. Joel Moore reminding you, you can catch every episode on our YouTube channel through the UCM Media Network. That's youtube.com/UCMMN. You can also listen on Spotify. As always, special thanks to Jake Mager for creating our theme music. Again, remember, this is Dr. Joel Moore reminding you, you can get there from here. Have a great day.